Welcome to the Sober Nation FM podcast, where we're putting recovery on the map. I'm your host, Jonathan Sylvester. This show is brought to you by Sobriety Engine. Do you want to take your recovery to the next level? Do you want more support, community, and fellowship? Sobriety Engine is an incredible community of men and women supporting each other in their recovery. You can get a ton of great tips, resources, and guidance to help you succeed in recovery and in life. Visit sobrietyengine.com to join today. Sober Nation FM is also brought to you by Recover Health. If you're ready to get fit and start living a healthier lifestyle, all while supporting your sobriety, then you can learn more about having me as your own personal fitness and nutrition coach at rcvrhealth.com. And whether you're listening to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, please share this with your friends. Follow, subscribe, and leave a review. Nation, let's hop right into today's episode. Today, I'll be speaking with founder of the Ultimate Mom Challenge and writer, Celeste Yvonne. Thanks for joining me on the show, Celeste.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And I want to hear all about the Ultimate Mom Challenge, your writing, and everything else that you're working on right now. But first, could you share a little bit about what things were like before you got sober and how you actually found recovery?
Yeah, so I had a pretty normal childhood growing up, pretty average, nothing very dramatic. I had a father who was a high-functioning alcoholic, but he loved me with his whole heart, and he was a wonderful man. I think growing up, I did not really see that anything was amiss, even though my mom was trying very hard to hide that from me and my siblings. And it wasn't till I was 15 and my father had a severe stroke, he was 52 at the time, that I understood that he was killing himself with the way he was drinking, and that what he was doing wasn't normal, it was dangerous, and it was potentially going to tear our whole family apart. So that was kind of my life learning lesson about what alcohol can do to a person and a family. Even so, it was very hard for me to understand, why would somebody choose a substance over me? Why would somebody choose a substance over his family? How could he look at a family versus a bottle and say, I picked the bottle? And it made me very angry. And I went to high school very angry with him. Even though he did survive, he was severely damaged. He had consequences that he would never recover from in his form of speech and his health and even his mobility. So I stopped talking to him for a while. And even then, once we were talking again, I was angry with him. I felt like he had done this to himself and this was his own consequence. And for my own life, I decided I was going to be smarter, and I was never going to let it get to that point with alcohol, because I was going to come up with these rules and I was going to learn from his mistakes and not do that in my own life. Even as I saw firsthand in college and in my 20s that I did not handle alcohol well. It was hard for me to understand when enough was enough. And binge drinking can be a very normal experience when you surround yourself with fellow binge drinkers.
Yeah.
So there was no red flags for me in that regard, because as far as I was concerned, I was following these rules that I had set up for myself, not to drink and drive, not to drink myself, not to drink before 5 p.m. And by establishing these rules, I was going to keep myself safe and out of harm's way.
Okay.
In my 30s, when I started having children, I think that's when I started to see the consequences of my drinking in the form of hangovers. Even when I wasn't drinking to extreme measures, I would wake up so exhausted and so drained with pounding headaches and thinking, how on earth am I going to raise a child today?
Yeah.
How do I take a day off from parenthood? Because I cannot do both right now. I cannot manage this hangover and parent this child. And I think that's when I realized like I was going to have to make a choice. This wasn't going to be sustainable. I was going to have to either commit to being the mom I wanted to be, or I can keep drinking at the rate I was going and lose everything potentially. And that's when I quit. It was about 3 years ago. I was 38 years old, and I made a choice. And I said, I'm going to make this choice, a choice my father did not have the opportunity to make. I'm going to make it now while I'm still young enough and I can still make these decisions with a clear head. And I haven't gone back. That kind of how I turned it around and found some redemption in my own story and in my father's story. And I would never go back. I definitely feel like this is the journey and the direction I needed to go this whole time. I just needed to get there on my own.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's a really awesome story. Now, you mentioned these rules, and I'm thinking back, in my own story, and I don't know if I really considered them rules because they were pretty flimsy. I would break them pretty much immediately. But how well and how long were you able to follow these guidelines that you had set out for yourself with drinking?
Yeah, I mean, they weren't stringent by any means. And I think my in my own head, I decided as long as I stuck to them in general, I'd be good to go. If people started drinking mimosas at 11 a.m. on a Saturday, I'm still going to go with it because it's a special occasion.
Mm.
And you can make excuses for any freaking rule you want to. There's no problem there. If you want to play head games, you can play them all day. And I certainly made those rules more and more gray area as time went on. I mean, I was absolutely drinking on my own towards the ends because I had established that in motherhood, you can drink alone. You're never alone when you're a mom, right? You've got kids around. So technically, my house is full. I'm just happen to be the only one drinking. I also do believe that I used some of the societal narrative that we hear around the mommy wine drinking culture to justify some of the habits I was forming around drinking alone or drinking while parenting or using a hard day in parenting as an excuse to open the bottle of wine, even though I had been drinking too many days in a row and I hadn't taken a day off, or I had insisted to myself that I would not drink that day.
Right.
There's always a reason to make an excuse.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. It can become pretty easy to justify, picking that drink up again for sure. Yeah. Now, you mentioned this, this time about 3 years ago now, which is awesome, where you just made this decision. Was there a defining moment that led you to make this decision?
Yeah, so it was in December and we had just had a very long weekend of holiday parties. I think we had 3 holiday parties that weekend. And I was going into work that Monday. So it was early morning Monday and I'm at my computer and I started to get the sweats and I started to get this panicky feeling. My hands were shaky. My heart was going on overdrive. And I got in my head that I was having a stroke, just like my dad. And once I went there was no going back. It went into a full-blown panic attack. I took myself to the ER. I checked in. I told them I think I'm having a stroke. And they checked my vitals and they sat me down in the waiting room for an hour, which, was probably the sign I needed that everything was going to be okay. But that hour-long wait, I'm grateful for it in the end, because that was like my come to Jesus moment where I was like, if I don't get my act together, I will do the exact same thing my dad did. And I will have the same consequences. And I sent my mom a message saying, hey, can you meet me at the ER? And she did. She met me there. And I told her right then and there, I said, I have a drinking problem. I think I'm an alcoholic. And she was so supportive. But I also knew that by saying that, there was no going back. I could never excuse what just happened or pretend like it didn't happen or go back to the way life was previously, because she would hold me accountable. So from that moment on, I knew things were going to change, and they did. I never went back from that moment. She held me accountable. I held myself accountable, and I stopped drinking after that point. Things I did for my recovery, I started reading books, learning more about what this is like. I knew about AA from watching my dad's experience,
Right.
and had misconceptions about it because I did watch him go to AA while being actively drunk, being an active alcoholic, and it left a very bad taste in my mouth, and it still left me angry. So I tried to find other ways to do this aside from AA, and I found that through the books that are available now. I found it through support groups, and I found it through a lot of therapy, a one-on-one time, and then finding things that work for me as an individual. So there was different things I did to make this work for me, and it has. But that was also me knowing what I needed and what I did not want to do to make this work. And I do think that one thing that's really hard when you're a mom of young kids. I remember somebody meeting with me saying, you should do 90 meetings in 90 days. And I was looking at them like, are they new to planet Earth? Where am I going to find the time to go to 90 meetings in 90 days when I can't even have 30 minutes to take a shower?
Yeah.
Where does that even happen? So I think that there's things I needed to do in my own life to make this work for me. Otherwise, I was going to find more excuses, and I was going to go back to the way things used to be. So you have to look at you as an individual, how you work, and what works for you. Is it accountability? Is it self-accountability? Is it forming new habits? And you've got to make your recovery work around you as a person.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, even though you watched your dad struggle over the years and try to get sober, and then he had this stroke, you credit your dad with really helping you to get sober. Why is that? And why do you see it that way?
I have no doubt that if I had stayed on the path I was on, I would have lost the ability to choose between my family and drinking, just like my father got to that same moment of time where he lost his ability to use common sense, where the addiction took over. I think I was able to see that and notice early enough, like, I still have a choice at this time. If I keep going, I won't. And I will make, in 10 years' time, maybe, I will make that heartbreaking choice that I had to witness as a child, where my own dad chose drinking over me and his family. And I don't ever want to put my children in that position. Shame on me if I can't learn from my dad's own battle. Him and I were so similar in so many ways. And I think when he had his stroke and I was still in high school, I was angry with him. But the older I grew, the more I realized just how similar we were in personalities, in personality types. And I think I would be doing my father a disservice if I did not learn from his own experience and did not make the choices I could still make when he lost his ability to do so. And I do credit him for that. He was a good man. He was a wonderful father. Addiction won, and it breaks my heart, but I can honor him and his legacy by choosing life and choosing my family over it while I still have that choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's really cool, and really sounds like a great example of when people refer to this as a family disease sometimes, how you just said, like, I could see how my father and I were so alike and the same personality traits and,
Mhm.
especially with the drinking and stuff. And that's incredible that you were able to break that cycle. And I'm sure that in that moment there in the hospital, you were probably thinking, wow, like the next time I'm here, like maybe I will be having a stroke like my dad did.
Yeah. I mean, what difference would it, how different would it be? Whether it was my father in the hospital having his stroke, or it could be me in 10 years. Like, nothing I'm doing is any different than the games he was playing in his own head.
Hmm.
I'm sure he probably had his own rules he was setting in his head about what makes his drinking okay or excusable. And who am I to think that I'm that much stronger? It's definitely a humbling moment when you're like, him and I are so similar that I've been given this second chance, and I have to take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as you got started in your recovery and you started hopping into these books and, taking advantage of your therapy and joining support groups, what would you say was the biggest thing you were really struggling with early on in sobriety?
For me, that first year was really challenging because I wasn't sure what I was doing, and I wasn't sure what this was. Am I an alcoholic? Or am I taking this too far? Like, who am I? Do I now have to say I'm an alcoholic to anybody who asks me if I want to drink? What am I doing with this? I think for me, the concept of identity was really challenging, especially when I wasn't exactly sure what this was. I think in that first year when I just felt really insecure about everything I was doing, how I was doing it, and everything felt very fragile. Going to social occasions or social events was very scary because I couldn't predict how it was going to go. I would bring drinks with me, so I was prepared. So if somebody said, "Hey, can I get you a drink?" I would say, "No, thanks, I'm good, I got one." But I couldn't always be prepared for anything that somebody was going to ask. And so the biggest challenge in that first year, while I was still trying to figure out who am I and what is this and what am I doing and how do I explain myself, that was probably the hardest for me. It wasn't until I hit 1 year sobriety that I decided out loud that this is a lifetime practice. Like, I will never go back. I never want to go back, and I will never drink again. And I'm proud of that. It took me a year to get there. So that first year, I really felt like I was walking on eggshells.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure that's, I know I felt that way to a degree, and I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. They're just trying to figure out like just what is all of this. But I love how you that just described that, it's a lifetime practice because, I'm involved in a 12-step program, and you hear the phrase a lot, one day at a time. But I personally do believe that, like, I need to commit to this thing. And maybe not to the point where I'm thinking about, okay, I'm 7 years old and not drinking anymore, especially in the very beginning. Cause I know I did that. In my head, I was just like, well, how am I not going to drink at 40, or 50 or 60, I immediately went to, 20, 30 years down the line, but I agree with you that it is a commitment. So you mentioned a moment ago, mommy wine culture. And that's something that we've talked about here on the show before. But for those who aren't familiar with that, what is that? Like, what does that term mean? How would you describe it? And why is it a problem?
The mommy wine culture is the narrative that parenting is so challenging. It's a great excuse to drink, essentially. That Mommies need wine to survive the chaos that comes with parenting. And it's supposed to be humorous. It's supposed to be lighthearted. I think the problem is it's so prevalent, and it's gotten to the point where it's everywhere, you know, right down to t-shirts in the teen section at Target, that people forgot it was a joke to a degree, because it's become less of a ha ha ha, let's laugh about what I just said about mommy needing wine, and more of a, you had a bad day, did you have some wine? Almost like a, if you've had first A, then B. And I feel like we've lost the primary focus that should be part of that conversation, which is parenting is really hard. I mean, that's the defining focus of that conversation. And we should be talking about why it's hard and what we can do about it, and things that need to change. I think that the mental load of motherhood, which is the invisible work that moms carry and that weigh on us, the assumption that even if we return back to work, we're still responsible for everything the children do, all the stuff at home, the family calendar, the meal planning, that's the mental load. I think the mental load is really hard and heavy. And instead of talking about, as a society, what we can do to lighten that load, instead, this joke about mommies needing wine has just gone gangbusters. Mm-hmm. Almost as if that is the solution. And I think that's where the disconnect's been. And that's kind of been my goal in my writing, and the conversations I'm trying to have at a national and even international level, to say, let's get back to the focus. Like, we need to focus on this, like from a policy standpoint, from a company standpoint, from a societal standpoint, what can we be doing to focus on the mental load for moms? And my worry is the mommy needs wine culture drifts us away from this important topic and makes it a funny, lighthearted comedy bit that has potential ramifications, like justifying excessive drinking to deal with parenting, which shouldn't be an excuse, but for people like me, it was an excuse. It was an excuse to drink more because I didn't know what else to do. Yeah. Mommy's running on empty. She's tired. She's drained. She's getting no help from anybody. She's going to drink. That's kind of what would go through my head. Like, I don't know what else to do, so I'm going to drink. Instead of having these deeper conversations about what we can do or what needs to change, we fell into this wrong dynamic and wrong conversation. And I'd love to help spread the message that there is a much bigger conversation we need to be having socially that does not lead us into addictive behaviors.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen, a lot of the memes and the shirts and, like it's wine o'clock or, whatever. I mean, and on initially, some of it is funny, but then it's like for someone like you and I, and just someone like when I hear your story, for instance, like I really start to understand what that really means. And they are these products and these things that are almost like trying to desensitize us from that. But it's like, yeah, okay, maybe on the front end it's funny for a second, but what that really means is like this mom is probably, or not probably, but could be driving around drinking wine with their kids in the car. Like it's gotten to that, but and that's just one little example. But yeah, I mean, that's really scary. Now, your writing has been featured in several well-known publications, and there was one piece in particular where you wrote about a play date that went a little sideways. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's touching a little bit on this mommy wine culture topic.
Yeah. So I was early in my sobriety. I think I was about 6 months in, and I was invited to a play date at a mom's house who I did not know very well. So I went over there. It was like early afternoon. So I did not mentally prepare to have a drink in my purse in case I was offered alcohol, anything like that. It did not even cross my mind. I guess just because I thought it was early during the day and I didn't know this woman. I just didn't think we would go there. But almost first thing when I walked in the door, she kind of giggled like, it's mimosa time, and she popped the champagne. She's getting the drinks ready, and like I completely froze up. And in my head, I'm just like, oh crap, what do I do now? And I felt like a kid in high school who just walked into a party and somebody wants to know what you're drinking. And you're like, should I be cool or should I not be cool? Everyone's going to judge me based on what I say right now. And at first I was like, well, maybe I will accept the drink and pretend to drink it. And then part of me was like, just tell her you don't drink. But I think I had this fear with not knowing what this was. Like, first of all, I don't know this woman. I'm not going to come out and just be like, oh, no, thanks, I'm an alcoholic. Like, I wasn't even comfortable saying that word to myself. So why would I say that to a stranger? And then part of me was like, well, if I'm not fun and I'm not a drinker, maybe she won't invite me on play dates in the future. Like, I want to be fun. I want her to like me. And I felt so many different feelings going into this. And I think my question for that moment was, why is alcohol the only drug we need to explain not using? So why, if I say no to this, is that going to be awkward? Would that be awkward if somebody offered me hard drugs at this play date? Would it be awkward if I said no? Probably not. It'd be kind of weird to be offered that in general.
Yeah.
Alcohol as a drug is so expected in the world we live in that it's weird if you don't drink it. So at the end of the play date, I did wind up saying, you know what, I stopped drinking 6 months ago. I feel great. I have a toxic relationship with alcohol, and she was great. And we had play dates after that. Everything was fine. But it was a pivotal moment in my own growth, because for me, who was still trying to understand for my own self, what is this? What am I doing? It put me in a position where I felt like I had to explain myself to other people, which was something that I was generally trying to avoid up until that point. And I think we live in a culture where you do have to explain yourself for not drinking alcohol, which is uncomfortable and weird and kind of ridiculous. I'd love to get to a point where we normalize sobriety. I told a friend, like, normalize the drink choices you're offering. If you're going to offer a beer or wine at a party, also throw in seltzer in there. So when somebody says, thanks, I'll have seltzer, it doesn't feel like they're turning you down, and it doesn't it doesn't pinpoint the focus on, whoa, she's not drinking. That goes there, it feels being called out. I'd love to get to that point where it wasn't even a choice to be made, because we're already offering various drinks that are alcoholic and non-alcoholic at a party.
Yeah.
Or any sort of social engagement.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the truth is, like, these days, and I think this is, part of the positive aspect of all this, there are less and less people drinking. I mean, for the most part. And I would say, I think that was really starting to change pretty substantially up until, this whole COVID thing happened. Because up until this, like, there were alcohol companies with like record losses, and they were all shifting to how can we make money off of products that are non-alcoholic. And I know what you're saying about people, looking at you weird, or something when you say you don't want to drink. I remember, although the culture is a little different, I was in Europe one time with my wife. I think we were in Italy, and she was having a glass of wine, and the guy asked what I wanted, or what kind of wine I wanted. And I was like, no, just, sparkling water or something for me. And he literally like dropped what he was writing on, like down by his side, and looked at me like, what's wrong? Like, what the hell's wrong with you? And so we may not get that response here, like in the States, but still, I think a lot of the times you're right. It would be so much easier if it was just the norm, to where it's like you have alcoholic and non-alcoholic options available. And there's no need for a conversation.
Right. I mean, when it comes right down to it, if someone wants to talk about it, that's up to them. And some people are really comfortable being out in the open, but at the end of the day, it's really nobody's business. So it should just be a yes or no answer. But we do live, I feel like, at a time where when you decline a drink, people want to know why, or it certainly piques their interest at the very least.
Yeah.
There must be a story there.
Exactly. Right. So you write this piece, and then what is the response to all of this?
So it went nuts. I had 14 million views.
Oh, wow.
It picked up in media outlets all over the world. It was tremendous, and it wasn't all positive. A lot of people were really angry. And at first I was very defensive about it, because I was like, it's none of your freaking business.
Well, and what were they saying? What were they angry
They
about?
were mad that I didn't just tell the girl right up front.
Okay.
And I don't drink, so no, I do not want a mimosa. Let's move on to something else. I think they felt like that was the wrong decision. And, the only reason the play date was awkward was because I made it awkward. And at first that really frustrated me, because I was like, well, if you haven't been in recovery for 6 months, you would not understand how awkward everything is.
Yeah.
Those early months. But over time, I just reread it to myself a couple months ago. I reread that piece, and I was kind of annoyed with myself too. I think with time, your mindset does change. I feel like a lot of me would make very different choices now about how I would have handled that situation if it was now instead of 2.5 years ago. But it wasn't. It was early in my recovery, and I had a different mindset back then. So I have to honor that. But I think the responses were all over the map. People who were in recovery, especially the ones who were in early recovery like me, completely understood, and they were very supportive. But yeah, I did get a lot of pushback, and a lot of people saying, there's nothing wrong with drinking. Why? It's your own problem for saying no in the first place.
Right.
Like, we still do get a lot of really ugliness and pushback from people who think that alcoholics belong in a basement, out of the way, so nobody can see them or hear them, and us normal people to live our lives. And so I got, I got that ugliness too. It was all over the map, and that's what happens when you get a large piece. But I also did get a chance to write a piece just for the Washington Post to kind of expand on that topic and speak to the dynamics of the mommy wine culture, how I got to this place, and how I do feel like alcohol is an accessory to parenting, and it absolutely affects my own ability to make friends and stay sober.
Yeah. Well, and this isn't just an isolated incident. Like, this isn't just your story, right? And we've had some other moms on the show that talking about the same type of culture that is, come about for moms, and also just women in general. I mean, there are record numbers of women that are binge drinking these days, right? And I mean, it's just, it should be talked about. And I think it's an interesting it's a little different for everyone, I think, early on in sobriety, but there are these social situations. And see, like for me, I was able to, I guess, defend it a little bit easier. Like I wasn't just tossed into a situation like you were. And, but you know, it was kind of weird the first few times because, you know, people were kind of tiptoeing around me a little bit. I mean, there was even a situation, I'm 7 years sober now. And there was a situation recently at, for 4th of July where a guy that I've known for a long time, but I hadn't seen him in years. He knows I'm sober, and he was asking another friend, like, "Well, like, is it okay to bring alcohol over there?" Like, I was, you know, all I could really do is kind of laugh about it because I'm just like, man, it's not. It has, you know, do whatever you want. It has nothing to do with, you know, with what I want. So anyway. Now, did you ever talk to this mom again after all of this? I mean, you said you guys still have play dates.
Yeah, she reached out to me not too long ago, maybe a month or two ago, and she found that article I had written 2 years later, and she said, "Is this piece about me?" And I laughed because, yeah, technically she was right. It was based on my experience at her house, but I was so general about the whole experience at all. The only thing that probably made her think that this might be about her was the way she said mimosa time. Everything else, you know, it wasn't about her or her house or anything that could help her distinguish that this was about one particular person, except that. And I said, yeah, I use that setting as an example, but the fact is this similar experience has happened several times at this point. So I used that story as a setting off point to draft this piece about the situation and what it's like being in early sobriety and not really feeling like you have a right answer or a good answer to explain why you are no longer drinking. And it was great. We laughed about it. And it had, I don't think it had any effect over our relationship, but it was funny to have kind of that come full circle where she came across it herself. So
That is funny.
It was a little moment of, yeah, you caught me.
Yeah.
It was all good.
Well, good. Now, can you tell us a little about the Ultimate Mom Challenge?
Yeah, so I started the Ultimate Mom Challenge right when I started writing. I started writing about 5 years ago, and I didn't quite know what I was doing with this. All I knew is I wanted to write, and I wanted to write about parenting and my experiences parenting. I had just read the book, The Happiness Project, and in it, Gretchen Rubin every month focuses on different ways that cultures aim to achieve happiness. So whether it's through meditation or affirmations, different things that help people find happiness or become more happy. And I love that concept. And I thought, well, what if I did something like that, but more steered towards being the mom I want to be? So each month I would focus on something like being more grateful. 1 month would be more mindful. 1 month aiming to be more healthy. And each month the goal is to be the ultimate mom, which for me was a very specific look and feel that I thought would make me feel more confident as a mother. I did it. I went through this whole year process, each month, different focus. I called it the Ultimate Mom Challenge. I trademarked it. I even started writing a book about it. I found an agent. Everything was great. And then, this was in the course of a couple years. I announced to my my reader base that at that point I was 1 year sober, and I was very excited. And I have realized and committed at that point to being sober for life. I was just so grateful for my experience, and I knew that this is a lifestyle I wanted to choose for me and my family moving forward. So I got a resounding response from that, and people were so supportive. But my agent called me and said, we gotta put the Ultimate Mom Challenge book on the table, right? And I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, you can't have a book about your attempt to be a better mother and not talk about sobriety. I mean, you explain to your fans that is what is making you the ultimate mom. Your book doesn't talk about that. And
Right.
I was like, okay. And I put it on the table, and we're working on a book now about being a sober mom, which in all irony is my work to be the ultimate mom. Everything changed. Everything changes when you get sober. Your priorities change. What you think you need in your life and your family and to achieve happiness, all of that shifts, and for the better in every way. It just looks different. And of course, my agent was right. I can't write a book about being the ultimate mom without the entire book being about focusing on sobriety, because when I was in that year, the underlying problem in every single situation, which I never wrote about because I was living in this own world and own narrative that I'm fine, everything's fine, this is what moms do, was the fact that I was drinking too much. Never find happiness with this ongoing means of coping.
Wow. Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense, that you need to rewrite the book from this new, and I guess really just a more honest perspective, right? About what was really going on. And I get that. I mean, not like I was doing, a ton of meditation or affirmations, and there were probably, I don't want to say probably, there was zero gratitude being practiced whatsoever. But even when I would try to do other things to just be like a happier or better person in general, kind of like you just said, I wasn't addressing the root problem. And I was certainly one of those people that was trying to do everything but address the substance abuse problem. And if I didn't do anything about that, like none of the other stuff would matter. So I get that. And that's pretty awesome. Now, what is the Ultimate Mom Challenge right now? Is this a group of women, or?
So it's, I don't know what the Ultimate Mom Challenge is anymore. I know what it used to be, and I don't know what it's going to be next. What I think it is for me now, and what I think my readers see it as, is it's one woman's journey to being a better, happier, more satisfied person. And it's obviously a lifetime work in progress, but I think that's what it's always going to be. But it's changed, because what it started as was this definitive book, and now it's more like a nebulous idea of what I see parenting as, and what I think it can be, and what I think we're capable of making it. It's just not there yet. But what I write about is generally, I talk about the mental load for mothers. I talk about the mommy wine culture. I talk about how they are so intertwined, and that's not getting enough attention in the media. I talk about my own fall from grace. I talk about my sobriety. And then I talk about parenting kids, one with special needs. And there's just, I think parenting and motherhood is very nebulous, and there isn't, there's nothing black and white about it. So I suppose the space I'm in, and the space of what makes the Ultimate Mom Challenge, it is where it's at, because that is what motherhood is like. It's every day, not, you don't have an end goal. I mean, aside from trying to keep the kids alive, right? It's something bigger than that. It's an attempt to be a good mom, to give your kids what they need, to create boundaries, and to not lose yourself in the process. And I think that's what I will spend the rest of my life working on, and trying to find that balance, because as long as you've got kids who need you and rely on you, it will always be a struggle and a tug of war, of back and forth, of trying to figure out where your needs end and where theirs begin.
Yeah, I get that. And I'm not a mom, but I can certainly see how, just from my own mom and other moms I know, it does seem like a constant battle. Like, okay, how do I still take care of myself, but take care of the kids? And I know that if moms take better care of themselves, they take better care of the kids. So I can just see how it's a battle, and I think any mom would do better with some kind of guidance, and really just having someone like you to share an honest perspective about all of that. You're also part of the Sober Mom Squad, and I've had a few of the moms from the squad on. But can you tell us about that and what you guys are actually doing?
Yeah, so we started the Sober Mom Squad in March, just as the pandemic was hitting. And we started to feel a lot of weight coming down on us individually. You mentioned this earlier, like the COVID, drinking it was like a whole new mommy wine culture, but it was like a COVID wine culture. Just the memes went crazy. The conversation was all about drinking to cope. And it just felt like an avalanche of pressure to drink this really strange, scary time. And I was feeling it, and some other writer friends who are sober too were also feeling it. And we said, let's meet up and let's have calls. Let's just once a week, anybody who's a mom in recovery or who has a toxic relationship with alcohol can join us on these Zoom calls, and we'll just talk about it. We'll talk about some of the pressures we're facing. We'll lighten the load. We'll support each other. Let's just start it. So we did. Once a week, we started this little weekly meeting for moms to meet up. And it was popular, and people loved it, and nobody else was doing anything like it. And the response was just phenomenal. So we just kept going and we kept going. And at one point, I think we even said, hey, if you guys feel like this is done and your needs have been met and they no longer are being met, please let us know. And the women kept coming back to us saying, no, please keep doing it. So it kept growing to the point where we will be doing a full-on a mommy squad, the Sober Mom Squad membership, and it'll be a full-fledged group and program. And it got to that point, which is so exciting. And there's just nothing else out there like this. And it's a community of women who support each other like none other, because we all know the struggles of parenting, and now we know it during the pandemic. And nobody else out there who can understand some of the pressures and experiences we're facing the way we are. And to have that camaraderie right now has been detrimental. And I think, you're seeing the depression levels and the suicide rates and the relapse rates going on right now. It's because people don't have the community and connection they need during these very unprecedented times. And I feel like that is what this group can provide.
Yeah.
So it's been profound, and I'm so grateful for it. And I hope it just continues to grow from here. I know there's so many moms out there who did relapse during this pandemic. I've seen it with my own followers. So my hope and prayer is they can come back to us, and they can come back to us, whether it's through my writing or my Sober Mom friends writing, or through the Sober Mom Squad itself, and we can be stronger than ever.
Yeah. Wow. That's such a cool community. And I would think that there would have been a need for that even without this pandemic going on. But, I see moms who are trying to stay sober. A lot of them are working or trying to figure out that during this time. Now they're trying to figure out what's going to happen with their kids' school. So they are the teacher to some extent, or trying to keep their kids in line while, doing this distance learning or online learning. And then on top of that, they're doing all of the things that they would normally be doing. And then on top of that, there is just this for a lot of people, a gripping fear around this whole pandemic. And it just seems like a recipe for disaster if you don't have any tools in a community to connect with. And what you're describing, Celeste, is really one of the main reasons that, and I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful to be an alcoholic and a drug addict, because I look at people that don't have the same issues we do, like some of my friends and family members, and they don't have anyone to connect with. They have no community. They don't have any of the tools that are kind of like the norm to us, or they're not using them anyway. And so, it's for a lot of us, I think it's a cool thing, because it started out as, hey, I'm going to use these tools and these guidelines as a way not to drink or use drugs. But now I'm going to use it to get through life and create an awesome life.
Yeah.
Right. And that's so cool.
Yeah, I think it pains me to think where I would be right now if I was not sober during this pandemic. It would have been, if I hadn't already hit rock bottom, this would have been it, because this has tested me and everybody to our limits. But can you imagine what we're showing our children during perhaps one of the hardest times in our lives, how we are coping during hard, trying times, and what we're doing to support ourselves and our family during this? I hope that if something similar happens when my children are grown up, they will look back on this experience and remember what we were doing to stay healthy, to stay in a community, in connection, and to stay healthy, and not slip and fall to really dark, dangerous, addictive habits. And I hope that they'll remember this if it ever does come to that. And, good times or bad, I feel like this is what we're showing our children. They're watching us. I know my kids are looking at me, and if I'm looking scared, they're going to feel scared.
Yeah.
I need to stay strong for them. And I need to show them that when times get hard, this is what we can do to get through it, and to get through it in a healthy way. And from then, they have to make their own choices, but at least I showed them one path they can take moving forward. If I wasn't sober during all this, I can only imagine what lessons they would have gained from that.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point. And I actually, when I was in a meeting, when all of this started, a recovery meeting, someone pointed out, and I hadn't even thought about this, and it's probably in part because I don't have kids yet, but someone had just pointed out that this could very well be the moment in time that 18, 20 years down the line that I'm sitting in meetings, hopefully, and I'm hearing some younger people essentially relay that this was the traumatic period in their life that they kind of feel like brought about their substance abuse issues. So I'm with you. I mean, I think it's so important, like now more than ever, we have to stay connected, and we have to figure out how to do that for our families too. So I think you're dead on with that. So Celeste, before we wrap up, what is maybe one piece of advice that you'd like to share with the Sober Nation?
My suggestion would be, when you're looking at how you are going to work your recovery, to base it around your own personality and what works for you. Because I do think that as individuals, we all have different ways of recovering, and there's no wrong way. So I think for a person who accountability is really important, that they need to really focus on that during the recovery. For somebody who really needs science-based backing and science-based evidence, there's so many books that you can really focus on to get a better understanding of what's going on neurologically. For people who need the community, like they know that in their heart they're extroverted and they need that to feel alive and strong, and that needs to be a really strong component of the recovery. And I think you need to individualize your approach based on who you are as a person and what works for you as a unique individual. And I don't think that gets enough attention, but I think it's critical for having a wonderful experience and for getting through it.
Yeah, that's really awesome advice. And I love that, because I think it does need to be individualized. Even if you choose to stick with primarily a particular recovery program, there are still going to be other things that I like or you like or are going to appeal to us more or help us more in our recovery. And I think you're absolutely right in that we need to really try to find that stuff, because it's only going to be helpful. So you can learn more about Celeste, her writing, and the Ultimate Mom Challenge at theultimatemomchallenge.com. Thanks again for coming on the show, Celeste.
Thanks, Jonathan. This was great.
Be sure to check out the show notes for all the info from today's episode. Sober Nation FM is brought to you by Sobriety Engine. Sobriety Engine is a free online community of men and women supporting each other in their recovery. Visit sobrietyengine.com to join today. This show is also brought to you by Recover Health. If you're ready to get fit and start living a healthier lifestyle while supporting your sobriety, you can learn more about having me as your own personal fitness and nutrition coach at rcvrhealth.com. And again, whether you're listening to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, please share this with your friends, follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. Nation, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.